So normally I'm a fairly quiet person, but once you get me started on this subject, I don't shut up. So let me set a timer so I don't run away.
We'll remind you. That's the president's job.
We'll let you know.
They will let you know.
Just throw something.
Change glasses, you ready to go?
All right, I'm ready to work. So again, thank you for the introduction, Aubrey. Aubrey is relatively new to our organization, but even in this short time, he's really established himself amongst staff who've been there for years and even decades, as the case may be. So I really appreciate having this chance to talk to you all today about our work. And this feedback's driving me a little crazy.
We got tickets.
Go ahead, try that. It's very sensitive, so I think
Okay.
it'll pick you up.
Okay, great. So let's talk. CTP's mission is to broaden employment opportunities for people with disabilities. And I'd like to tell you about some of the things that I have learned over the years, and we have learned collectively over these past 15 years that I've been there. And I tell you these things because I think that they have a universal application. It's not just about people with disabilities, but it's something that we can all learn from. And to preface what I have to say, it sounds a little funny, but I believe that one of the most ineffective ways of teaching things is to tell people things. People really need to experience things in order to understand them. So rather than me just simply telling you what I've learned, I'd like to tell you some stories. And these stories are what have informed me, and perhaps they'll also inform you. So, story one. The first story is about a woman who came to our training program. She was born with a visual impairment, and because of that visual impairment, she appears a little bit odd. And as a child, she was really severely teased about this, about her physical appearance. And over time, over the years, this really led her to a sense of low self-esteem. She eventually came to CTP in order to improve her computer skills so that she could find work. While she was in training, she revealed over time to her fellow students and the instructor that she was involved in an abusive relationship. And people talked to her about this, and her attitude was that, well, it's, in quote, "it's all that I deserve." She felt that because of her unusual appearance that she couldn't really expect anything better than this terrible relationship she was in. But over time, the students talked to her and gave her this feedback that this isn't really acceptable, that really she should not accept this kind of treatment. And in the end, she ended up breaking up with her boyfriend or husband, whoever it was, and moved on with her life. She continued her training at CTP. As it turns out, we're not matchmakers, so we didn't find her a new boy, but we did help her get a great job. And in fact, she's still working there today. It's been about a year. So it's really been a great success for her. And really a key part of that was breaking that cycle of low self-esteem that allowed her to get into situations which were very negative for her and continue that cycle. And through that feedback from her students and the staff, she was able to break that cycle and move on with her life. To me, the lesson of this story is that we all need community to be whole as people. And it's easy for us to get involved in our own lives, our own problems, and these things become our reality. We need those outside voices sometimes in order to break out of that reality. That feedback from the community is really crucial, and especially at times when we don't even realize that we need it ourselves. This woman in our relationship just felt like that's the way life is. That's the hand I've been dealt. And through community feedback, she learned that that's not necessarily true. There is more that she could have in her life. So that's the first lesson to me, is that community has a tremendous power for all of us. Second story. So this story is a little bit of a tough one, but bear with me. So this person was at home one night. He was a successful IT employee. He had a good job. He was watching TV at home one night, and several men broke into his home. When they found, they were for the purposes of robbing it, and when they discovered him, they beat him severely and literally left him for dead. The men left after they were finished, and eventually he was able to crawl out of his home and was discovered. So his body healed for the most part, but he was left with a permanent brain injury. Because of this brain injury, his life really fell apart on him. He eventually lost his home, he lost his job, he wasn't able to do that work anymore. His behavior was so unusual, his friends and family really couldn't handle it, and he became homeless. One day, an aid worker discovered him living under a bridge and talked to him about what services were available to him. Ended up referring him to a brain injury clinic. And at this brain injury clinic, he literally had to do things like to learn how to talk again and learn other basic cognitive functions. He did very well in this program, and when he was finished with it, they encouraged him to come to CTP, which he did. He enrolled in our computer technician training program since it was most similar to the work he had been doing previously in the IT field. It was really hard for him. Cognitively, he's much more limited, so he knew what he had lost. Before, he knew what his capabilities were, and now he knew he was just starting over. Imagine starting over in your middle age with being able to think. But fortunately, the training went well, and he really improved a great deal. He got a temporary job in a help desk and did okay. At the end of that job, when the contract ran out, he just found it impossible to navigate the complex world of IT work. He was not able to adapt to the work environment, so he returned to CTP and came back to us for help. And over time, he became such a valuable volunteer that we began paying him a volunteer stipend, as much as we can realistically pay. That, combined with his other benefits, allow him to make ends meet, and he continues there today. This man is the sweetest, most pleasant person you can possibly imagine, and it is really my great pleasure to work with him 3 days per week at CTP now. So he told me that when he was living under the bridge, that he expected that he was going to die there. He saw no way out. But when this aid worker discovered him and took enough care to explain to him the services that he could, get him to the services that could help him, he said he felt a great sense of gratitude. And then as he went to the brain clinic and he relearned these cognitive skills, that sense of gratitude just kept growing. And that sense of gratitude is the thing that continued to drive him on to essentially overcome what I think a doctor would say were impossible odds. The brain injury is too severe. He will never be able to learn to function in these ways. But yet somehow he has. He's overcome. And that was through the power of gratitude. So that's the second lesson that I take, is that gratitude is one of the most powerful forces that we can experience. And if you can create a sense of gratitude, you can do amazing things, even overcome what people consider to be impossible. Third story. So this next student was born with a minor learning disability, and then before he came to CTP, he was a computer programmer. At a certain point in his life, he developed diabetic retinopathy and lost the majority of his vision. He had a long recovery, and during that time really lost hope. Lost hope of being able to work again or to have any quality of life. When seeking help from government on basic survival needs, was eventually referred to the Department of Rehabilitation, which is our state vocational rehabilitation system. Was given two options for retraining. One was to learn how to stock vending machines, and that would be the job, to stock vending machines, or to come to CTP. Now, obviously, he chose CTP because he wouldn't have the story to tell otherwise. And while at CTP, he learned a new way of working with this new visual impairment. And equally importantly to learning this new way of working was to discover the world of nonprofits and social services. He really fell in love with them. So after he finished his training, he applied for a part-time job at CTP and became an instructor there, part-time instructor. So that was 15 years ago, and that's my story, actually. So I've been at CTP for 15 years. I started as a part-time instructor. Sometimes life takes you on a funny path to get you to where you're going. So what I have personally learned from this, my lesson through my experience and having been at CTP these years, is that service to others is really the best thing that you can do with yourself. It is so gratifying to have a job where I'm completely focused on helping other people achieve their goals, to help them become better people, to advance in their life, to get a job, to become independent, and all of the things that we do accidentally in that, having people get out of an abusive relationship, and all get out of institutionalization, things of that nature. So again, my lesson is that service to others is one of the most important things that we can do with our lives. So those are my three stories, the three lessons: gratitude, community, and service to others. And we talk about people with disabilities, and I've learned that through working with them. But of course, these are things I'm sure all of you share with me. Just in the short experience I've had here in the club, I can feel that you have these same values that I do. So let me tell you a little bit about CTP's program. Hopefully you've felt a little bit about what I feel about having worked there. But we have this idea in my industry about so-called special education, people with special needs. And while there is a little bit of that, we have to overcome people's specific barriers to using a computer or performing certain tasks. Mainly the issues are just human issues. Same issues that affect you and me affect our students. And so some of the values that we try to include in our program are to treat each person as an individual. Life is not a one-size-fits-all kind of a situation. We're all quite unique in our needs. And with people with disabilities, just like we all have our own strengths and weaknesses, people with disabilities, that disability tends to amplify those strengths and weaknesses. Weaknesses are more profound, but at the same time, strengths can also be more powerful. If you're a person with a disability, you are used to being a problem solver because you're having to overcome a barrier just to do ordinary things in life. So our program is designed to be as flexible as possible to really accommodate everyone where they are. And again, that's got nothing to do with disability. We're all best when we're in a situation that's flexible and appeals to our strengths and assists us with our weaknesses. Another part of our program has to do with honest feedback. After we gain trust with our students, we're able to talk to them about their barriers to employment in ways that they've often never heard before. And some of these things are specifically disability related, or sometimes they have to do with the kinds of experiences people have because they're disabled. And sometimes it has nothing to do with disability at all. So I'll give you an example. I had a student who is a recovering drug addict. And you've probably seen people like this. He's very thin, long hair, covered in tattoos. Did not look like a friendly person. He also had some emotional stability issues, which probably are what led him to a life of drug addiction. But they were still there, and in certain stressful situations, he would act out in ways that people didn't like. He was completely harmless, a very gentle guy, but his behavior would scare people because he was so physically intimidating. Even when he was just acting bad in a way that for anyone else we would just ignore, people were afraid of him. So one day, after I had gotten to know him well, I talked to him about this. And I said, you know, you're not going to change your physical appearance anytime soon. And when you have these reactions to stress, people are afraid of you. And he had never considered it. From his point of view, he was just having these emotional reactions, but he didn't consider that people were becoming afraid of him. And that would lead to more stressful situations, which he would then further react to, and the situation would escalate over time, make it impossible for him to keep a job. So I just gave him the simple advice. When you feel this stress, you think something's going to happen, just walk away. He says, well, I can't do that. You can't just walk away. You're supposed to handle this stuff that comes up. I said, well, it's going to be much worse if you stay. So you just need to learn to walk away. So he started doing that, and actually he ended up in fewer stressful situations, and he had to use this coping strategy less and less as time went on. It was about 2 years ago. He's been working in IT ever since. So it's really been a great success, and he just needed to receive some honest feedback from someone that he trusted. And we hear that a lot from students. No one's ever said this to me before. Sometimes they don't even believe us because they've never gotten the feedback. But all of us would be better in our lives, better in our relationships if we were better at being honest, talking about things before we become angry about it, addressing it immediately and honestly in a supportive way. So this lesson has to do with disability, but really it's a lesson for all of us, in my opinion. So today we really have new areas that we're focusing on. One is youth. In our programs, traditionally, we've had students aged 18 to 80, literally. And what we find is for our disabled students who have been sitting at home for 10, 20, 30 years, it's very difficult to work with them and have them relearn how to behave in a professional environment, to socialize them to the expectations of a workplace. But young people are, well, they haven't learned too many bad habits yet. They haven't become further disabled, so they're easier to work with in a lot of ways. But something funny happened where we discovered that when you have a mixed environment of youth, 18 to 25, and people 50 plus, they have a natural synergy together. The youth have an enthusiasm and excitement and a newness for life that the older folks really appreciate. And the older folks have an experience and a wisdom through all the things they've lived through that the kids actually really identify with. And maybe you see this in your own life. If you're lucky enough to have grandkids, sometimes grandparents can tell grandkids things that stick that parents can't. Right? So I think that's probably true. And we see that in our program. So our youth program, part of our strategy is to incorporate both young and old in the same classroom. And we find that it works more effectively than to separate the groups. Another area we're working in is autism. There are so many kids that are graduating from high school now diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And this is a very significant issue that our society is facing. All these kids graduating from high school, and they need a work environment that's going to be appropriate for them. So we're beginning to work with, we've always worked with autistic folks, but we're focusing in on it a little bit more these days. And I'll give you another example of what it's like to work with and how it's different working with an autistic youth. We had a student in class, and he was doing poorly. He's a very smart guy. We knew he had the potential, but he just wasn't taking it seriously. He wouldn't complete his assignments. He wouldn't come to class on time. All these sort of simple things. So I talked to him one day, and I said, you know, you're not demonstrating these professional skills that we would expect in a workplace. This is going to be hard for us to find an internship, job placement for you. So what's going on? And he says, well, it's not work, it's school. So I'm treating it like a student. I said, okay, but we expect you to demonstrate these professional skills while you're here as a student. So we know that you're ready for that next step. And he said, well, I wouldn't do that at work. Oh, okay. I said, so let's just forget you're a student. Let's just pretend you're an employee here. Let's make this work. I'm going to give you real work assignments, and I'm going to have the same expectations of a workplace. And now you think you are going to work, not going to school. Do you think it's going to be any different? I'm thinking in my mind, no way. But he says, yes, I would be different. Okay, let's give it a try. Came back the next day. He's dressed different. He's on time. He's ready for his assignments. I give him the work. He does it. He completes it. Perfect. Incredible. Day and night difference just by using this tiny little technique. And in fact, he now volunteers with us. We run a computer repair and refurbishing program. And so if you listen to the media, or if you know a little bit about autism, the thought is that they don't have social skills. So you might be surprised to hear that his volunteer position is in customer service. Okay, you weren't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that. So here's the funny thing about this specific individual. He does not perceive emotion in other people. So if someone calls up and they're angry, he's not aware of it. He just handles the facts. He's just objective. Here are the facts. And something funny happens to you if you're angry and someone is ignoring your anger. He just says, well, I'm trying to help you, and here are the facts. And their anger just dissipates because it's hard to be just angry by yourself. So that's the kind of thing that we've been working on these days. So to conclude, time is up, but I'm incredibly proud to represent CTP. It's really close to my heart. Obviously, it saved my life, and I feel so lucky that I found it. Really the difficult part I had writing the speech was just to limit the number of examples that I have. There's so many stories, there's so many things that have happened that honestly feel like miracles to me. Like, I can't believe the kind of transformation that people have gone through. So thank you very much for giving me this time. And I really hope that you can feel a little bit of what I feel, and if you heard what I had to say, that's wonderful, but if you can feel it too, then I really feel special. If you have any questions for me, they've got a few seconds left.
Jerry.
Once we had somebody from the library come, and they have adult literacy, And I had problems with literacy when I was a child. And I asked a question of these adults who were in this program about how they dealt with the negative feelings they got as children. And you must have to deal with that a lot.
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of, so we're really focused on employment. That's our key thing. We want people to become employed. We don't quite deal with all the other issues around disability. But the thing that we see is that once somebody has a disability, classified as disabled, goes through special education especially, there's a stigma attached to them. They're treated in certain ways. They're limited from certain opportunities, even the opportunity to make mistakes, certain kinds of mistakes in life. And so it almost becomes like a environmental disability that they have in addition to whatever their diagnosed disability is. And the longer time goes on, the more difficult the situation can become. You know, people get involved in drugs, they start having kids when they're young, they do all these different things which are taking them further and further away from professional life, making money, being able to be independent. So yeah, it's really a tough one. And the Ed Roberts campus is a really wonderful place for that. It's 7 nonprofit organizations that came together to build a building at the Ashby BART station. And we have a whole community and set of services that address all the different needs. But it's just so wonderful for some people to be in an environment that's full of other people who are disabled and purely focus on disability and aren't freaked out that somebody is in a wheelchair or paraplegic or whatever the case may be. That they're just people. And we're all there together in this thing.
I have a question.
Please.
I
can't see you at all out there. So.
I'm straight ahead.
Okay.
One head though. I have a dear friend who's has an autistic daughter, and I've known him since birth, you know, for many years. And this daughter is now 25, 30 years old, and mother is still the caretaker, quote unquote, even though the child has, her daughter has really good computer skills. And I wonder what's going to happen when mom goes away. Have you seen situations like that?
Mostly the autistic students who come to us are so-called high functioning. You know, autism is considered to be a spectrum. Our high functioning people are the ones that relate better socially. Lower functioning people don't necessarily even communicate at all. Autism is an incredibly complex, you don't even call it a disability. Autistic people call themselves neurodiverse, right? They think differently about things, they work in a different way, so it's really a multi-dimensional kind of a spectrum, if you take my meaning. We've seen it a little bit the other way, where parents are so protective of their kids that they don't want to let them go, they don't want to let them be independent, and of course that causes problems. I've seen one of our autistic students, when their parents would come in and sit in a meeting with me, their behavior was completely different than when the parents weren't there. When the parents were there, they acted very immature and young and wouldn't pay attention, wander off by themselves. When the parents were not there, they'd sit in their seat, they'd work on their assignments, they'd have adult conversations. It was kind of incredible. Each person, though, is like such a uniquely shaped puzzle piece. Figuring out where they're going to fit in is tough. So, you know, no easy answers.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay.